Stuart Holbrook has spent his life in the world of collectors. As president of Theriault, the world's leader in the auction of antique dolls and figurative art for over 30 years, he's managed the often personal and always wild world of collecting and collectors. His market expertise and knowledge of trends comes to life in The Curious Collector, where he shares his experience and experiences in real-life stories, alongside sage advice on how to build great collections within the happy life of a collector.
Welcome back to The Curious Collector for episode 35. I'm Stuart Holbrook, and it's the end of the year, the end of 2025, and the first year of The Curious Collector podcast, and what a year it has been. And thank you to all of those who have been loyal listeners throughout and have been there from the beginning when we were doing, well, I don't know, when we were really kind of feeling out what people wanted to hear and learning a little bit more about some of your, I guess, desires for a podcast in this particular subject. And it's been really interesting, an incredible learning process for me. I have to admit, when I first started it, I believed that ultimately this was going to be about collecting in general, but I just couldn't help get away from the fact that it's dolls and doll collectors and figurative art that really is my wheelhouse. And it was impossible for me to ever kind of escape that trap of just focusing in on the conversation being about those particular items and those particular collectors. But I do believe, and I hope that for general collectors of so many other subjects out there, that your ability to come on and listen to this and utilize dolls as one example, that within it you do understand and realize that they do cross over, and the content and the lessons and the collectors themselves in many cases parallel everything out there that we see in the multiple genre world of collecting, be it baseball cards, stamps, coins, collector cars, everything. There are so many similarities, and I hope that people were able to achieve some process of entertainment or learning through this podcast. And we will continue on into 2026 with a whole lot of new ideas and episodes that we're going to be focusing on. And I want to say in this process, too, before we get on to the subject of today, I wanted to give a thank you at the end of the year here to Tammy Theriault, my producer. And Tammy, you're there in the studio in Los Angeles, and I hope it's a warm day. How are you?
Well, no, we're at the tail end of that really big rainstorm.
Okay, I don't want to hear it. It's 30 degrees here. Okay. So I'm back east and home. And so, but I wanted to give a shout out to you.
Thank you.
I think people have come to learn a little bit more about you through this year, because I occasionally have you on and chatting with me, that you're not only a renowned producer, radio broadcaster, but you're a doll collector. So you really get the idea of what we're shooting for here, aiming for in this podcast. And you've been just absolutely crucial for me in helping me evolve from the beginning. That first episode we did, which I think was last December.
It was,
of 24. Mm-hmm. And how far I think we've come. It's all been a product of you and your training me. And although I've ignored you quite a bit of the number of things, like in the beginning, you telling me you can't go over 30 minutes on a podcast. You just can't do it. And I was like, wow, talk about restricting me. But I mean, Tammy, you're telling me I have to be restricted to 30 minutes on any subject?
That's true. And, it was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous. And after a while, you're like, you know what? Just do what you want to do. And it ended up, most of our podcasts ended up becoming over an hour long. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're just going with it. And hey, I know it may not fit the frame of what people say are acceptable podcasts out there of 30 minutes, but that's okay. We're doing our thing, and hopefully people have come to enjoy it. Or I don't know if I told you this, Tammy, but one collector at one of my doll talks said, "Oh, I love your podcast. It's great. You know, I put you on 1.5 speed so I can get through it faster."
Oh my gosh. No, you never told me that. Oh, gee.
Didn't I? Oh,
I wonder what you sound like. I'm going to have to try that just for
fun. I
know.
I have never done it either. I want to hear it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. It must sound like me auctioning, actually.
At least.
I'm auctioning a podcast, basically. If you don't like the 1 hour podcast, if you prefer 30 minutes, put me on 2 times. times speed and see if you can get through it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
But Tammy, thanks. Hey, I'm curious.
Yeah.
You've got all the stats there and you share some things with me, but we're at the end of the year. I'm curious, what have been the top 3 podcasts that we've done this year of listeners?
Okay, let's just take a look here. We will look at the back end of the whole thing here. Well, I've got to tell you, the runaway winner, Bill Greening.
The interview with Bill Greening. I can see that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he was amazing.
I can absolutely see that.
Barbie's designer. That one's the runaway number 1.
Okay.
Next on the list, Lessons from a Collector, Gail Cook.
Absolutely fascinating. And it definitely shows, I think, a combination of 2 things I'm hearing right now. The first 2 episodes, most popular, were about particular people. One was an interview with that person, and the other one was about one of the most beloved and iconic figures in the world of dolls, Gail Cook. That's an attraction. People want to know more about other people. And I think that's something we need to think about for next year in 2026.
And I'll tell you, I love it when you delve into collectors. Because a lot of these people, I know their names. I've met a few, but I know their names. But to hear the story and compare their story with my story as a collector, it's fascinating. So those are on my list of faves.
Well, that's the goal. And I haven't told you yet, but one of the things I want to start focusing on is a series of interviews with current collectors about their life in collecting, how they got started, their vision, what it's meant to them over these years, for people to come to kind of understand the heart of a collector in a little more personal manner from that particular collector. Every collector comes with a unique lesson and a unique experience that I think really does help other collectors, especially if you're just getting started out. So that tells me definitely we need to be focusing on that. That's really interesting. And what was the third?
How to value a doll.
I can see that.
Me too.
That probably stems from the idea of just even the general public stumbling on that and saying, oh, maybe this can help me understand what's the value of my family heirloom or something along those lines, even though that was really not the essential purpose. It was more to help doll collectors themselves understand valuation of pieces and how it relates to today. But that's really interesting. So, okay, I want to know, be honest, what's the worst episode from number of listeners?
Okay.
The least popular.
Let me look here. Oh my. It was entitled A Few of My Most Memorable Auctions.
That's so interesting. I actually really liked that episode. I thought it was a great look at some auctions and some of the different characters and unique moments that we've had over these years. And wow, I'm really fascinated by that. And I do recall there was a lot of feedback afterwards of people saying, oh, thank you. That episode was such a great sort of throwback to some old times I had forgotten about and old auctions I had, were buried in my memory chest, and you brought them back out for me. So that's interesting, but oh well, we have to go with it. The people have spoken.
Yes, they
have.
have.
And that was my least liked episode out there. If you haven't heard it, let's see if we can pump that up and get it up out of the least. Go back and listen to it. If you haven't heard it, give it another try, because I actually kind of liked it.
It was fun when we were recording it. It was fun when I was editing it. And yes, I remembered some of them. Some of them I was like, oh gosh, I wish I'd gone to that one. I would love to have seen that happen. Some were funny. Some were kind of...
Some were
heart-wrenching
sad.
A little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it goes the gamut, but it just shows how insane, how different, how unique these auctions back in the day when you used to have them in the big ballrooms and all that. They were an event. They were really something to see, and so many things happened.
It was the drama of the day was always so wild, and it's definitely changed. And we're going to talk a lot about that today as well, in fact, in the theme. So, yeah, that's really interesting. But Tammy, thank you again for helping me on this journey of podcasting, and I've been really enjoying it. It's been a great, great exercise for me as well, of something to focus on when I'm out there on the road across the world. As you know, I'm traveling 250 to 300 days a year.
Yes.
So having my little laptop and my little microphone, I have to carry this microphone across the world. And I can't tell you how many x-ray machines I've gone through in airports where they pull my bag off.
Oh, no.
And then they pull out the microphone. And I remember one TSA agent then pretending he's like singing into the microphone.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, can you not play with my microphone, please? And it's like,
Now, that would have been something to see as well.
Exactly. But it's been so much fun doing this when I'm on the road and from different hotels across the world. I think we've done them from Australia, Japan, all over the U.S., Europe. Did one from Taipei, I remember. And trying to match the time zones with you is the most challenging thing. But we figure it out. And again, thank you for guiding me through this first year. And I'm looking forward to next year. I hope you are too.
Oh, Stuart, I'll tell you, this is really the highlight of my week when we record because, you and I have been friends for many years, and this has kind of reunited our friendship, which is wonderful. And it's great talking dolls with you and listening to what you have to say because they've been a huge part of my life since I was 12 years old, and now they're a bigger part of my life in a different way. So thank you as well for letting me work with you on this.
Let's keep this going, and let's keep the Curious Collector going for 26 and look forward to more with it.
Yep. You got it.
Thanks, Tammy. So let me get on and get talking here. We're going to talk today about my year, not just the podcast, which I think kind of framed an entry into this particular subject, but we're going to talk about a very, very special year as well, not just the podcast, but the journey that I took starting in February for 10 months across America, meeting with doll clubs in what we called Table Talk. And many of you who've listened to previous episodes have heard my updates from different areas around the country that I was recording from, and some of the table talks that I had just experienced, and a few of the funny stories along the way that I shared with you before we got into the subject. But today I want to share with you a cumulative about this whole experience. I call it the Heart of Collectors, my year across America. And I want to give you, first of all, before I talk about a lot of the different events and the different meaning that I felt this had for collectors and myself, I want to give you a little intro in how the whole concept really started. Now, let me begin by saying, I have lectured at doll clubs for decades. It's been a big part of my outreach and my ability to share with others some of my experiences, not only about the history of dolls, which I really don't get into all that much in my doll talks, but mostly about doll collecting, building great collections and doll collectors, the doll market, valuing a lot of the things that you hear me talk about in the podcast. This is my wheelhouse. This is where I think I am the best in being able to communicate. And it's a subject as well, I think, with a lot of collectors that few are out there doing it. It's very easy to find people to talk about subjects of particular dolls. And I always joke, I don't play dolls. And it's true. It's not my area of particular passion that you have in examining some of the very deep details, or like my mother, Florence, who is an avid researcher. Yes, I know the history. Yes, I love the subject. Yes, I can identify many unique things about the dolls. But I've always felt my strength, and I guess maybe it's just what I like, so that's why I'm better at it, is talking about you, collectors. And so I've spent years and years traveling around to doll clubs, but never before did I take on a 1 year like this, where I decided I really wanted to reach out to as many clubs as I possibly could over about a 10 to 11 month period, just crisscrossing the country, going from one to the other. Not a flyover, just fly into a city, do a doll club talk and fly home, but really going town to town in the old style Charles Theriault on the road. If you remember that show, it was my grandfather's favorite television show in the 70s. And my grandfather was an incredible spirit and one of the most inspiring people in my life. And he would always, when I was a kid, make me sit down and watch Charles Theriault on the road, because he would always tell me that these are the stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that is the story of America. And so I wanted to kind of have that moment as well, where I just took to the road and went to all these clubs and talked to ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That's all of you. And so what inspired this? So kind of rewind to 2024. And it was in September that I happened to have been in Omaha, Nebraska, and I was meeting with a husband of a doll collector who had passed away and the need to sell this collection. And one of the people who was friends with this collector, Margaret Hine, a dear friend of mine as well, great collector out of Omaha, heard that I was in town to see the collection. And she said, "Oh, Stuart, it just so happens we're having a doll club meeting on the very same day you're here. would you mind coming by and just saying hi to all the doll club members? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. So I went over about 11 o'clock and I thought, oh, I'll just be there for a half an hour, make a quick appearance, say hi to everybody, chit chat for a little bit and be on my way. Well, it ended up being that I spent, I think, about 2.5 hours sitting around in this table because it's a small club, about 9 members, I think. And we had the most incredible conversation. And it was just that, a conversation. It was a table talk. And I found that it was very different from the other lectures that I had done at doll clubs around the country, in that I got up in front of groups and it was more me speaking throughout the entire time with that club rather than a conversation. And it inspired me with the idea of doing just that with doll clubs around America, and also being able to relate the idea for these doll clubs that you didn't have to have 30, 40, 50 people for me to come and meet with you, that I'm very happy to sit in a living room with 7 of you. In fact, I often really preferred and loved the smaller groups because it became more personable, more interaction back and forth, more conversational, as I said. So it ended up being then I came up with this idea of launching another full year around the country of doing the table talks and the doll lectures. Now, I've done this in the past on a couple different occasions. Every 7, 8, 9 years, I'll publicize that this year I'm going to be available for doll club talks, but never had a response like this time. It was unbelievable. And by the time we released the information of the timeframes that I would be in each region, we ended up booking, I don't even know how many in the end, but we ended up booking something like 60, 65 clubs around the country. So it had a far more of a response than even I ever imagined. And when I released the whole schedule of the tour, I remember one collector, she sent me a message and she said, "What the hell are you thinking?" And at first I thought, well, I think it looks perfectly doable. I can handle this. Except I did forget one part. I forgot that I still have to do all my other work. And that is doing collections, traveling around the world overseas, doing all the auctions. So yeah, there was a point about halfway through that I was thinking the same thing. What the hell was I thinking? But I was able to get through it. And it ended up being, I would say, one of the great defining moments of my career. One of the most memorable years that I will look back upon a lot of these moments, and they will give me the fuel I need sometimes to get through difficult times, to remember the goodness out there that I witness across this country with the beautiful heart of the collectors. So, when people ask me, why are you doing this? A lot of times, yeah, I'm doing it because I felt there was a message that I needed to convey to collectors. I felt like there was an opportunity for validation of collectors that I don't think you get too often. I don't think you get enough for this incredible protection and preservation of important three-dimensional objects that represent the human experience. I mean, I do believe firmly that dolls and figurative art are the most important collectible in the world today, from the human connection we have, not just of childhood, but of what they represent in fashion, in styles, in different times, in women's studies. So many different areas intersect in this. And you are the great protectors. You are preserving this incredible history and not really getting the accolades and the attention that I think you deserve in this noble and fantastic endeavor on your part. So for me, it was an opportunity to go, and instead of giving lessons necessarily on how to build great collections or what's the value of a doll, how to value a doll, and some of the things you see in the podcast, but rather sit down, look everyone in the eye and say, do you realize the greatness you are achieving in the protection of this art? And so for me, that was really important because you're not getting it out there in the general public, I feel, enough, if at all, in some cases. But here's the other thing. I did it for me. There's been a lot of changes over the years within the industry. And in the auction industry itself, you see the parallels of how, not even the parallels, I would call it the prediction of how things are evolving in the world of society. And that I came from an age and a time where I would go up and do auctions where there would be 300, 400, 500 people. And you heard Tammy and I talking about my most memorable auctions. And that's why it was the least liked episode of the podcast, in that people are like, well, we just watch online. Because a lot of those auctions I was talking about were really these major events where hundreds of people gathered from around the world, and there was drama, there was energy, there was excitement. There was so much going on in that room. And I fed off that. I feed off these things. I love an audience. I love to stand up in front and look across a room and feel that energy that is out there. And so things really changed, obviously. And I've talked about this in the past, the episode that I did on collecting and COVID, and talked about all of the changes, and especially in the world of auctions, of how it really migrated to more of a media presentation where I'm auctioning to a camera, and I might have a crowd of a few people, but I have thousands of people watching online from home. Well, that's fine. I get that. And I accept that that is the new way. I missed collectors. There were a lot of collectors that I used to see 3-4 times a year at these different auction events that only bid online now and bid from home, and I never even get to talk to anymore. And so I thought, this is a wonderful opportunity, not just for me to validate collectors in that sense that we talked about earlier, but as well, maybe to validate myself, to realize that people still want to talk to me in person and see me in person and spend time and break bread. And so this was for me as well, to give me a reconnection with so many of the people that I have learned to love over the years in this incredible, incredible world of collectors. And so, yeah, it was for both of us. And that's why it became a thing, and why I pushed myself through about 65 of these across the country and did documentation of a lot of the different clubs and photographs where we all stood together and just had a great time. And I will tell you, there wasn't a dud in the entire thing. Every single collector, every single club welcomed me with open arms, made me feel so at home with them. I felt they were so happy to be recognized. And I was so happy to be recognized and to be accepted into their world for a few hours to share, talk, and laugh together about our common passion, dolls and doll collectors. So it started in February, and I'll tell you about some of the funny ones and interesting ones that I went to. And I will tell you every single one, as I said, was fantastic. So don't think if I don't mention your club and that moment. I clearly, in a podcast here that's supposed to be under 30 minutes, but is actually usually over an hour, I still can't mention every single one. But I want to mention a few that just stick out of my memory that are really unique experiences. The first one I did, let me just say, I started it all out in late February in Charleston, South Carolina, with the Charm of Charleston Doll Club. And this is a great doll club with a lot of friends that I know from auctions over the years and great collectors. Catherine Peterson, Cheryl Lane, Deborah Jenkins, the list goes on. And so it was a really great way for me to start, in that there were so many good friends in this particular club. So I remember getting there, and one of the jokes I've had over the years, because I've been to so many doll clubs, is I always joke that I've eaten more Jell-O molds than any man in the world. Now, I realize that tends to be the old school doll club meeting where you have Jell-O molds that tended to be served all the time. We're going back 20 years, 25 years, that it seemed like every doll club had a Jell-O mold for the doll club meeting. And so I always joked about that. Now, I think the cuisine of collecting has improved slightly, actually exponentially, in that you will find much better offerings now at doll club meetings beyond Jell-O mold. But it became a joke, and people laugh about it all the time. And so there became, I guess, an insider joke of different doll clubs making Jell-O molds for me when I arrived on this table talk. And so it was quite funny that the first one I did in Charleston, they secretly made a Jell-O mold that they were presenting to me at the end. And this was not just any Jell-O mold. The concept was they put a Barbie into the middle of the Jell-O mold, and then its parts were covered with whipped cream on the top. And so I have no idea who came up with this idea, but it was a Jell-O mold disaster, because as they were carrying it out, all the whipped cream fell off of the doll, the Barbie. And the next thing you know, I have a naked Barbie inside of a Jell-O mold. And if you've ever seen a Jell-O mold being carried across the room, it jiggles a lot. I guess it was a less than auspicious beginning to table talk, but it was certainly a funny one. And I will always, always remember that moment and sitting there and them presenting me with this Jell-O mold of a naked Barbie with whipped cream that had collapsed. So thank you, Charm of Charleston. You were a great way to kick it off with friends, and it really got me in the mode of developing my rapport, developing my talk, and to be able to really get going on this travel across America. And I remember one of them a couple weeks after was in Findlay, Ohio. And some of you are wondering, where's Findlay, Ohio? Well, it's south of Toledo, maybe, I guess about 30, 40 miles. Great club there, the Fort Findlay Doll Fanciers. They actually gathered in with the Toledo Doll Club as well to meet with me at the Mazza Museum. Now, I had no idea what this museum was. So a lot of these places I just pulled up to and walked in, and I had no idea whether it was going to be a living room. One of the doll talks was sitting outside in the yard, or whether it was going to be a hall or community center, or in this case, a museum. Well, it just so happened to be one of the most incredible little museums that I had never heard of. And I was so proud to be able to do the talk there, because this museum actually is associated with the artwork of children's literature through the ages. So what a perfect connection and a perfect opportunity for collectors to meet in this environment, because it correlates directly with our idea of the relationship of childhood to many of the subjects within dolls. So an incredible venue, and I will never forget that, and the kindness of these wonderful women who were there, and even made, because I had given them so many hot fudge sundaes over the years at different auctions, they made hot fudge sundaes that day, not Jell-O mold, but hot fudge sundaes actually. And we all ate ice cream together. The first time I've ever been able to have ice cream is I'm always auctioning at the auctions when we serve it, so I never actually get any of it, but it was great. I remember then a week or two later going into Florida and went to the Gold Coast Doll Club. And this was a great reunion again with so many fantastic old friends who I have known since, I hate to say it, I was a teenager. And it was in the home of a late collector whose entire family, it seems, is involved in the hobby of collecting, many of them in dolls. It's the Hansen family, or as we call them, Team Hansen up here. And Team Hansen spread around Florida and make up, I think, half the collecting market of Florida, if you ask me. They are all great collectors, Carol, Helen, Tonda. And this was held in Helen Hansen's house. Now, Helen passed away a while back, but the family keeps the house preserved and the collection preserved there to have doll meetings or gatherings or whatever, and to be able to share Helen's incredible vision. Now, I've known Helen probably since I was 12 years old, if you can believe that. And she's been passed away for some years now. And I remember her husband as well collect pedal cars, and they're still there preserved in the garage. But I had never in all these years of knowing Helen ever seen her collection. So this was the first time I got to see it. And it was an incredible opportunity to look around at the vision of what she had done over, I think she was collecting 50, 60 years. And still being lovingly preserved by the family and shared with other collectors, and just had a great time at that Gold Coast Doll Club. I started heading out west and ended up in Reno, Nevada, and at the Sierra Nevada Doll Club, where what a day. This was in a home, and it was such a fun afternoon, and it ended up being the longest table talk of any of them out there. I think it was almost 5 to 6 hours in total that I was there, and my talk ended up being over 4 hours. They put together an amazing, really engaging day they hired the Victorian tea ladies of Reno. Now, this is a duo of two ladies who dress up in traditional English Victorian tea dresses and those hats that you all know. And they come and they will actually set up an entire catered afternoon tea with scones and sandwiches and all sorts of different tea offerings. And they put together this very traditional tea party for you. And so we had this incredible time doing this tea party, but then as well sitting around and talking, and they were so great. And the Victorian tea ladies were really funny because they were absolutely loving the talk. I don't think they were used to really being engaged with anything going on in the catered functions that they do, but they were sitting there and listening. And at the end, this was the greatest accolade I could ever have, and that I was reaching people in that they came up and they hugged me and they said, I think you may have just created two new doll collectors in us. I just loved your talk. It was incredible. This was something that, if I can stop for a moment and say, those who brought friends, relatives, husbands, anyone along, I was attempting in this talk to be able to reach to them as well, an understanding and a validation of the doll collector so that they would appreciate you far more than they may have ever done before. I especially saw this with husbands who came that I don't think a lot of them really intended to be sitting there all 3 hours of my talks, as they often were, but ended up coming up and shaking my hand and said, thank you. I really get this. I really understand this a lot more. And I really feel I can be more supportive to my wife's collecting or my partner's collecting in the way that you presented these things on these concepts. So that to me was the greatest thing, greatest takeaway that I had from all of this. And that it did show that I was reaching others and being able to tell the story of collectors in a different framework of their being more cognizant of this being something beyond just a simple hobby, just a passing fancy, but something that is rooted in a very deep meaning by that particular collector. So moving on, got to go to Seattle and the Seattle Doll and Toy Club. And this was a really great afternoon because it was in the home of Shelley Helzer, the daughter of Rosalie Weil, and who's become a great friend of mine over the past couple of years as we offered, of course, the great Rosalie Weil doll collection. And some of you can go back to one of the earlier podcasts from late last year, actually, when we first started, when I did a 2-part interview with Shelley about Rosalie, the auctions that we did, and the museum over the years as well. We got to be great friends during this time, and she put together for Rosalie Weil's Original Doll Club a wonderful afternoon and meeting with lunch, and we got to sit around and not just tell stories about what I had come to talk about, but as well talk together about the impact that Rosalie left on the world of dolls. And I know they're hearing my perspective on that auction and what it meant was validating to them in the memory of Rosalie and her impact on all of them as collectors as well. I moved down south eventually, heading through Portland, Northern California, and a number of doll clubs. Sacramento was great, and then headed into Los Angeles. And I love the Crescent Bay Doll Fanciers. And this was in the home of Patrice, who is, I got to tell you, one of the most fabulous people you will ever meet in the world of dolls. Patrice did not just put on any doll meeting. She put on an entire catered function that she just happened to do all of the catering. She laid out a table like I've never seen. She had games for everybody to play. She had a whole program set up and published for everyone to read on what we were going to be doing tonight, including my doll talk. You know, I'm used to just coming in, we break bread, eat a little bit, I do the talking, and that's it. This was like a whole evening of fun. At the end of it, I'm eating the dinner and this most incredible dinner that she prepared with this team. And I'm looking at Patrice and everybody sitting around. I said, Patrice, I have never seen anybody put together an evening like this. You're like a professional. You should do this as a career. And everybody laughed and Patrice looked at me puzzled. I guess I didn't realize this. She said, Stuart, this is my career. I'm an event planner and a wedding and event planner. This is what I do for a living. I'm like, okay, well, you're doing a great job. And really, she is an amazing, amazing person. And that club was just fantastic. From one eating environment to another, I did my first table talk in a diner. Yes, a diner, not in a private room in the diner, right smack dab in the middle of the Black Bear Diner in Fullerton, California. This was an amazing thing because I'm used to speaking in private with a group, with the doll people, but here I had people all around in the room eating pancakes and bacon and whatever the else they're ordering at the Black Bear Diner. And it was so funny because people were intently listening to me. I was watching it. No one was talking at all the other tables. They were all just leaning in and listening to me in my presentation. And I could see a few occasionally shake their head, yes, yes. And so I hope I may have built a few new doll collectors at the Black Bear Diner in Fullerton. It was definitely a funny moment. And then there was the Hawaiian shirt. So clubs around the country would give me lovely gifts throughout, typically regional things that represented something from their area. And it was always fun and very thoughtful. And believe me, the food products I was given, you cannot imagine all of the snacks I had over the road across America for that 10-month, 11-month period, because people piled up bags of snacks for me on the road, keeping me nourished. But one club, the Renaissance Doll Study Club in Laguna Beach, they were an incredible group, very serious group, I will say, but really fun in the end in that they had prepared a gift like no other. I couldn't believe it when I unwrapped it. They had a custom Hawaiian shirt made for me with Gebruder Heubach baby Stuart dolls all over it. Now, if you happen to be on Facebook, you can go to Stuart Holbrook-Theriault. It's my Facebook account, and you can scroll back and find that particular club meeting where I posted the photographs of me in this incredible Hawaiian shirt of baby Stuart. And so I have this shirt. I love this shirt. And it's one of my goals that I carry it around to auctions now. And whenever I have a baby Stuart, I quickly throw the shirt on and stand next to the baby Stuart I'm auctioning there in particular to give them a shout out and a thank you for one of the most unique gifts I've ever been presented in this work. Thank you, Renaissance Doll Study Club, for the famous baby Stuart Hawaiian shirt. And then the other gift that I can never forget was from the Tulsa ladies and gents of the Tulsa Doll Club, and that is the now famous Tulsa cowboy hat. This was some kind of hat, is all I can say. A classic cowboy hat, which I don't usually wear, but let's face it, I was in Oklahoma, why not? But they emblazoned the entire hat with different features of Tulsa, I would say. Tulsa stickers, patches, pins, whatever. But of course, the front of the hat had the ultimate symbol of Tulsa, and that is the golden driller. Now, if you've been to Tulsa, you probably know what that is. But there is a giant statue in a park in Tulsa of an oil driller, an oil rigger, or whatever you call them. But he appears to be kind of, I don't know, shirtless. And, well, in this particular rendering on the hat, he looks kind of naked. So it's like I have this cowboy hat with a giant naked man on the front of it. That's called the Golden Driller. It was definitely awkward, but it was hilarious. People love this hat. I have it sitting in my office. I'm looking at it right now, and it just fills me with joy every time I see it because it is so absolutely ridiculous. There was one day in the office, I came in back from a trip, and I had the Tulsa hat on and the Hawaiian shirt. And one person in the office looked at me and said, "Oh my gosh, you look like an aging porn star." So I was like, okay, if you saw the hat and the shirt together, you would get that. It really is quite a look, but oh my gosh, what a day that was. It was fantastic. Robin, thank you for bringing us all together. We had a blast, a great time, so many wonderful laughs. I'll never forget Tulsa. And then it was on to more destinations throughout Texas, everywhere, and then up to Madison, Wisconsin, where they did make me wear a cheese hat. Suddenly hats took on a whole new meaning at these clubs, and everybody was presenting me with hats. And I now have my own personal collections of hats across America. In Madison, Wisconsin, the Doll Club presented me with, of course, a cheese hat, as is typical of all of Wisconsin. Yes, everybody walks down the street wearing cheese hats. Not really, but they do love them, and I had to wear one in the photograph. But they gave me the most practical gift of any doll club out there. They gave me beer. Yes, a 6-pack of beer. I cannot make this up. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. Now, this beer apparently is very, very unique in that it's quite famous in Wisconsin, this particular brand of beer. And it is the only beer made in Wisconsin that you cannot buy it outside of Wisconsin. It is literally impossible to find. It is only sold in between state lines. Well, I had to go to Illinois, but I'm taking that beer. I smuggled it across state lines and brought it to Chicago. And I will tell you that I happily consumed it over the next few days. So thank you, Madison, Wisconsin, for a cheese hat and a 6-pack of beer. Then it was back to Wisconsin again after Chicago, and I got to bring my daughter Kinley with me. And this was a really meaningful one because she had been wondering, what the heck is my dad doing out there across the country this year? All these doll clubs and the photographs with him with all the doll clubs, but she didn't really get it. And so I decided to fly her out. We had a dad-daughter weekend in Chicago, and then I brought her up to Wisconsin to the club of Louise Hedrick, Mary Walandi, a number of wonderful collectors of that Northern Illinois, Wisconsin region that we all came together for their annual summer picnic. And I brought my daughter Kinley, and she got to hear and listen to me for the first time. And it was really wonderful because afterwards she said, Dad, I get it. What you're doing is so wonderful. You really are helping people understand more about themselves as collectors. And you're really, I think, validating them, as I often was hoping. And so hearing that from her was very special to me. And I will never forget that time in having her. And I'll never forget the collectors there that made her feel so welcome that day and just showered her with love. And another moment that day that will be bittersweet and etched in my memory of that particular meeting was also Louise Hedrick, who couldn't make it. Her health had declined significantly. And as many of you know, if you listen to my other podcast where I talked about her briefly, she recently passed away. But we managed to get her on FaceTime, thanks to Mary Walandi, got her on FaceTime, and we put a phone up on the table where she could see me talking. And she laid in her hospital bed in her room in her home overlooking her beautiful garden. And she watched me that entire day. And then afterwards that evening called me and told me what a wonderful talk it was and thanking me so much for what I'm doing. And that meant more to me than you can ever imagine. And it would be the last time I would talk to Louise. So I will remember that doll club meeting as well. It was truly wonderful. Then coming back home to Nebraska, I had to go back to the doll club that started it all, right? And so I went back to Omaha and I met with the ladies. And I tell you, I was so tired at that time. I was like, I don't know whether to hug and thank you all for this incredible idea for Table Talk or to curse you for how tired I am in having done it. But we had a great time going back. I probably improved on the talk in much more meaningful ways, given the experience I had with so many doll clubs. So I had a lot more to share with them. So we ended up filling up another couple of hours in conversation with the great ladies of Nebraska. And of course, they gave me a hat as well, a Nebraska Cornhuskers giant hat from their mascot, Little Red or Big Red. I can never remember which one it is. Then it was starting to work back east and finally hitting to the northeast and some of the clubs up in my own region. And first went to New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And New Jersey doll clubs are always great. The interaction you have in New Jersey is really remarkable because they don't hold back. And so we would be talking and laughing and they would be like, what are you talking about? Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. I love these New Jersey clubs. One of them, though, was really special in that I got to reunite with Delight the Clown. Now, you're probably thinking, who? Yes, Delight the Clown. Back years ago at an auction in New Jersey. And these are the moments I remember so vividly in the days when auctions had big crowds and you went there rather than everything being internet based now. I'm just starting the auction and all of a sudden a clown walks in and starts miming and doing clown things. I'm like, what the heck is this? And so it turns out that this clown happened to be a doll collector and she was on her way to a performance she was doing. She was a hired professional clown on her way to a performance, but she she had time and wanted to run by the auction quickly to see if there was anything she wanted. And so I brought her up to the front, of course, because why not? I've got a clown ready for action and just happens to be a doll collector. So I had her actually as a runner for an hour at the auction, and we had so much fun. The crowd was laughing, and I'll never forget Delight the Clown. Well, lo and behold, she comes to one of my doll talks. Now, she's not dressed as a clown this time, but we had so much fun recounting this, and it was great to see her again after all these years. Then moved on to Hershey, PA. And you would be surprised to learn that they have one of the most vibrant clubs in America. In Hershey, they must have had 30, 40 members there, I believe, at my doll talk. And that's something to interject in this. There were a lot of the talks that I did. You heard me say it was more conversational. Well, I ended up being kind of one-sided conversation. I'm not going to lie. I ended up controlling most of it, though we would have back and forth and we would have questions, obviously, and I would tap into things that people wanted to talk about. But a lot of times it was just me talking. And that was probably better in the sense when there were larger groups, like in Hershey, 30 to 40, or Sacramento, where there were 30 to 40 and so forth. And there were many like that. But a lot of the smaller ones that were like living rooms, sitting around the fireplace with 8 or 9 or 10 members, they could be bit more conversational. But Hershey was definitely me doing a presentation. And I think I went on close to 3 hours. They were just, wow, what an incredibly engaged club they were. Valerie Moyer, who's a regional director, I think her term is just ending actually in a week or two. She extended it until they found a new regional director who is just a wonderful woman. This is her doll club, and she put together quite a day, I will tell you. It was held in a museum, the Hershey History Museum, and they arranged for me a docent tour, though it was closed, by one of the doll club members who is a docent for the museum, and took me around privately and shared with me the whole history, rich history, I should say, not just because of chocolate, no pun intended, of Hershey. And it was fabulous learning so much about the origins of the town before the chocolate factory, Milton Hershey's legacy, the school that he built there, really was remarkable. And so I thank them for what turned out to be one of the most really important and memorable days for me of that whole tour. And then I moved around Pennsylvania and New Jersey some more, upstate New York, and I ended up in Buffalo. And I remember Rochester and Buffalo, they were both fabulous. But Buffalo really stands out because of the funniest moment I think I've ever had at any of the table talks. And it happened just a few weeks ago. And it was there in Buffalo that I was talking up there, and we had a big group. I want to say it was 40 people, and it was a whole luncheon that they had put together in a banquet room. And so quite a layout that they had done. And I was up there talking, but there was this one woman at a table over to the side that her phone kept ringing. And I could tell she was just frazzled. And it was actually one of the old flip phones, which I was kind of laughing about inside. But, you know, that's fine. People's phone goes off. I usually just keep going, ignore it. But her phone kept ringing over and over. She would be fussing with it, trying to figure out how to silence it. She couldn't do it, and she kept pressing buttons, and she was getting really, really discombobulated over this whole thing. And the whole crowd was kind of looking over at her, and somebody leaned in and said, well, can't you silence it or turn? She said, I don't know how to turn it off. And then she yelled out to me, I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. It's my nursing home. They keep calling me because I escaped out the back door and they didn't know I was leaving. I didn't want to tell them. And I escaped out the back door and left to come to this doll talk and luncheon today. The whole crowd burst out laughing. The woman who escaped the nursing home for a table talk. And so I said, well, let me just tell you right now, I'm heading to Toronto, Ontario for a table talk right after this. If you want, you can escape with me together. We're heading up north. And she was laughing and she was like, I'm coming. I'm getting in. Let's go. I think I mentioned this in one of my podcasts earlier, the same story, but sorry if I'm repeating it, but it definitely was a wonderful moment. It was the first time I've ever had anybody escape a nursing home to come see me. Then it was up to Toronto and the wonderful ladies and gents of the Toronto Doll Club. They were just fantastic, put on a beautiful Christmas luncheon, and it was the very first fittingly, snow of the year. And fittingly, of course, not only because of the Christmas party, but fittingly because I was in Canada and our fabulous neighbors to the north. We had a great time, a great day. And then it was back down, Wethersfield, Connecticut. I almost popped over this one because this is really, I want to say, one of the more deeply personal ones for me, because my grandfather's family all originated out of Connecticut. And many of you don't know, but it was my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. I don't know how many greats go back, but who came from England as a Huguenot in the 1600s to that very place, Wethersfield, Connecticut, and settled there, and became one of the most prominent cabinet makers in New England at that time. His name was Peter Blinn, and his cabinets today are coveted in the early world of Americana furniture. And it was amazing to go back, and here we were in this community town hall that was right in the center of Wethersfield. And here I am, a late ancestor, a direct ancestor, but of many, many hundreds of years later, that I'm sitting in a place where he might have walked on that same sidewalk or that same street or that same path right where I'm sitting and talking about dolls. And so it was really an interesting time. They were a great club, another big group, and we had so much fun. And then there was Cape Cod and Ann Timpson's house, and wonderful to see her collection, and a great small group with my friend Danelle there as well. And then I finished it all off just 2 weeks ago in Pensacola, Florida. And Pensacola was a great one and unique in the sense that it was a go-around, a go-back. I was originally supposed to be at this doll club in early March, mid-March, and I was on the tour driving, and I was in Nashville, Tennessee at a hotel, staying overnight, and the next day was driving all the way into Pensacola, and the day after doing my doll talk there. I woke up the next morning in Nashville in my hotel with about 104 fever and barely able to move. I had a full-on throwdown, no movement, I can't even stand up flu. And so, of course, had to cancel the appearance, which I hated to do. The only one I canceled, if you can believe it, throughout the entire year. But there was no way I was going to be driving to Pensacola, let alone getting in front of people, let alone even getting out of my bed. I laid in bed for 4 days, but I promised them that I would reschedule, and we did. And I finally got there, and I finished it off, and it was an incredible day. They were so patient and wonderful, waiting for me to come back and do this talk, and that was it. It was over. It was done. And I remember going back to my hotel room that night, and there was just this feeling of, what do I do now? Where do I go now? Well, I went home, and that's where I've been for the past 2 weeks, and enjoying time at home and really reflecting on this moment and what I achieved. It was so fast. It was so furious. There were so many miles down the road, and keeping in mind that I drove to most of these. And through it all, I realized in Pensacola, sitting in my room, that it was over. And there was this feeling of, wow, what just happened? But then a feeling of what comes next. What comes next is, first of all, my sharing thoughts and sharing experiences with collectors, because we live in more and more a bubble in a lot of cases. And we see this with the auctions, where people are more insular, more introverted in their interaction in collecting these days. And so I thought I would share with you kind of a message of hope, a message of the goodness I saw with so many people across the country, and the need we have, the craving we have for interaction today, and to share with you what I feel are the future of doll clubs. A lot of what people said to me when they saw the photographs of the doll clubs across the country on my social media feeds, they were reflecting on the idea of, it seems like everyone is older. And I've heard this for years. First of all, so understand that collecting tends to be, if you look at the demographics, something I always say is, you come in your 50s, you go wild in your 60s, you go really crazy in your 70s, and you wind down in your 80s. That tends to be the migration of all collectors through this process. So that is normal. You just replace one generation of older collectors with another generation of older collectors. So that is actually quite normal. And this whole obsession with we need younger people in the world of doll clubs doesn't necessarily jive with the idea of the reality that people tend to collect later on in life, and which is one of the many things I talked about in these Table Talk lectures to help people kind of understand a little bit more about it. But yeah, you do see, though, that there are changes in the way doll clubs are evolving, in the sense that there are a lot of clubs out there, and I heard it and listened to a lot of the people behind the doll clubs. Some were thriving, some doing great. Some of that, I will tell you, due to consolidation, like Sacramento, where it was made clear to me that there used to be 4 clubs around the whole area, one in Stockton, maybe one in Auburn, and that eventually those doll clubs got so small that they pretty much all just migrated into one big doll club, the Sacramento Doll Club, and as such are thriving now in that sense that when you have a larger club, 20 to 30 people, I think you tend to have more engagement. You tend to have more unique experiences from different types of members and different collections that they build. So you can have different presentations. They just tend to be a bit more alive. Now, that doesn't mean smaller clubs don't work. They do. There are some small clubs that work great. A lot of that could also be that within that small club is somebody who is a clear-cut leader. And that leadership could not just come from their ability to really manage a club in the sense of having lots of activities, lots of unique moments, but also they might have a great collection that inspires and has an ability to show new collectors coming into the club, here's what you can build. And maybe they're not the wealthiest collector in the world. Maybe they are just like you. But look, they built a great collection, so they inspire people in a smaller club that we can do the same. So there are a lot of different types of clubs that work, and I saw them all. And I think more importantly, though I was there talking and I was there presenting, I ultimately did a lot of listening and a lot of hearing people talk about doll clubs and doll collecting and how they are engaging in collecting now. I'm not going to beat around the bush. We're at a crossroads. We're at a time when things are for sure changing. And the fabric of doll clubs of the future are definitely going to have evolutions that are not going to be what a lot of you think of in the classic sense of doll clubs. And you hear it. I heard it all across the country. The doll clubs are getting smaller. And a lot of it's really interesting. It's not that they're not attracting new members. They are, but they're losing members faster. And often it's not because memberships or the members are passing away, but a lot of it is that the members are just simply living such long lives that they are faced maybe in their late 80s, early 90s with mobility challenges, or they just simply don't want to go out driving anymore. They may live in an area where winters are harsh and it's just too difficult to get to doll club meetings. And this is why I've been saying that as we reach this crossroads, one of the things I noticed were the clubs that were embracing a hybrid portfolio of presentation of their doll club meetings, of which I was a part of, many of them, are actually doing better at retaining members who can't go to the meetings themselves anymore. And so by having them up on Zoom, they can still feel part of it. They can still see everybody. They can still listen to presentations. They're sitting at home, but that's okay. They're still a member and they're still feeling a part of this communication and a part of this social experiment of like-minded people coming together in this joyful hobby. They shouldn't be excluded because they can't get there. And we have the technology and the ability now to welcome them. And there's no doubt that future generations of collectors, that the classic doll club format that we have now will probably shift and change. I believe the doll clubs will, in essence, be there for years and years to come, but there will be less of them as more and more people will migrate to online clubs. More people will start looking at clubs being more about what they collect rather than a hodgepodge of many different types of collectors who just happen to live in the same local area. You can see it already. UFDC is starting to embrace this concept, and you're seeing they have an online Barbie club, an online Blythe club, and a lot of that will, I think, fuel the future growth of how doll collectors will engage with each other beyond just the local doll clubs. And this is a good thing, but it comes with a price. And that price is social atrophy, which is a term I read in an article recently about how as we become more and more introverted and socializing more online, we're losing this ability to communicate and relate to each other face to face. And online distorts so many things. Social media conversations are so different than face to face conversations. And what doll clubs in this coming together moment allow us to do is to realize the importance of social interaction in person that is vital, I think, to the human experience, and I think is vital to society. So I am all for the integration of allowing for online clubs, encouraging even online clubs and online engagement. But I also think that we need to really be cognizant of the fact that our own health, not just doll collecting, but our own health as human beings relies on our ability to keep together this fabric of coming together in a shared passion and a shared value of something that we really enjoy and being able to communicate together. And it doesn't necessarily have to all be positive. You know, you can disagree in person, and disagreeing in person is often very different than disagreeing online. And that's what we're losing, is our ability to disagree in civil ways, which you tend to do in person, and why the doll clubs are so important. Hey, there's disagreements in doll clubs. I know, I've heard a few of them. But the reality is how people voice those disagreements is usually vastly different than how they do it online. So I believe both areas of the future of doll clubs and doll collecting are equally important. Now, another point I want to bring up about this is people they associate the idea of clubs getting smaller with the idea that that means doll collecting is getting smaller. And that is not the case at all. And one of the messages and things that I was sharing with a lot of these doll clubs out there is to understand doll club is now bigger than just your local doll club. The local doll club is a part of the fabric of doll collecting as a whole, but doll collecting is actually bigger than it has ever been in history. Why is that? It's very simple. There's a lot more to collect now. There are new generations that are collecting dolls of their particular youth, whether it be Barbie or Blythe or Monster High or Bratz or any of these categories. They continue expanding on and building from there. Where, you know, the early aging of collectors in the 70s and 80s, they were primarily collecting antique dolls. There weren't that many past categories in which to begin with. But now you have endless arrays of different things and different dolls that might connect to your childhood and which fuel your beginning, your start to collecting. So there are more collectors out there now. There's just collectors doing things a lot differently. They're doing old school doll clubs for sure, but they're doing online. And then there's a lot of people that just choose privacy in their collecting. So all of these things can work hand in hand. We need to accept, though, and I want to reiterate one more time, the importance of the doll club where you come together. And it doesn't have to be every month. It doesn't even have to be every 3 months. You can have, I believe, in my perfect world, a doll club that meets 3 times a year. And that's great. That helps you avoid that social atrophy where you lose your ability to communicate with people in a shared setting like this. So I've been home for 2 weeks now. I've been thinking a lot, reflecting on this journey across the country. What did I see? What did I learn? There were so many incredible moments. And I encourage everyone out there, Instead of doom scrolling on your news or listening to what people tell you is supposed to be the situation with our country, I will tell you this great experiment of America is truly electrifying. If you get out there, if you experience it, driving across the expanse of this country is truly one of the most remarkable experiences you will ever have. You will see and learn more about the heart of this nation, which I saw through the heart of collectors in positive ways that will fill you with hope. I've traveled to nearly 100 countries in this world, and there is nothing that still amazes me more than the beautiful vastness and the beautiful hope that this nation conveys on me every single day. And I see it through all of you, through the collectors, but I see it in the journey as well to the collectors that I am embarking on almost constantly in my career, driving across these highways. I remember pulling off at an Indian truck stop and eating at an Indian restaurant in, of all places, Oklahoma. Because you may not know that 150,000 Sikh Indians make up a huge part of the trucking industry around the country. Immigrants that have come here and are doing a noble and fantastic job. And stopping at one of these Indian restaurants and sitting down and talking to some of them and hearing the story of the grand tradition of Sikh truck driving. It truly is America. It truly is one of the most astonishing things you can experience. That's part of the reward of traveling across this country, talking to people, not just the doll collectors themselves, but everyone. You come to realize how much we all have a shared story. We are all immigrants in this country. We all came from a different place. We all came to build a better life. That's what makes America the great experiment. That's what makes it beautiful. But we only come to understand this if we talk to each other. And doll clubs and doll collectors have an incredible opportunity in not only having the shared American experience, the shared American story of where we came from, how we came here, our ancestors who helped build this great country. It also comes down to our shared passion. We all love and respect a single thing. We love figurative art. We love dolls. We love the stories they tell. We learn from those stories our own history. And as such, we're able to communicate together across lines that there's no divisions, there's no politics, there's no beliefs that are different because we share in this one thing and we're able to find common ground. One of the books I read while I was traveling around the country this summer is called It's Only Drowning by David Litt. And David Litt is an interesting character. He used to be a speechwriter for Obama, who during COVID went into a depression and decided that he was going to do something to get himself out of this. He was out of work. He wasn't writing anything. He was really needing something. So he decided, I'm going to learn how to surf. But the only person he knew who surfed was his brother-in-law. And his brother-in-law was the complete opposite of him. As David Litt describes, I once threw my back out moving a bag of kitty litter. My brother-in-law threw his back out because he was training to be a UFC fighter. He came from the manosphere. He's a Joe Rogan fan. And David Litt is a very liberal speechwriter for Obama. And so two opposites. But they found this shared passion in surfing and soon became brothers, traveled around the world together and became the best of friends. Doll collecting is no different. Take a look at some of the friendships you've built, lifelong friendships, people you may have never met or never communicated with before. You came together through this. Revel in this shared passion. Be good to each other throughout this hobby to realize that it helps you escape the trap of falling in to think that life is a bubble where we have to live in a bubble of our beliefs. No, we can all live together believing different things, and we can find that ability through the shared passions like doll collecting. And this is what I saw in the hearts of collectors across America. People coming together, people being positive. Why doll clubs need to be with us for the future, to give us this opportunity, to give us a chance to avoid this social atrophy, to give us truly the happy life of a collector that will go on for generations, and to inspire in others seeing how important these hobbies are beyond just something that pleases us, but something that opens our eyes and opens our hearts to other people that may be different than us.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Curious Collector. The Curious Collector is hosted by Stuart Holbrook and produced by Tammy Theriault. We invite you to follow us on social media and feel free to leave any questions you have for Stuart on Facebook at Stuart Holbrook-Theriault or follow the Theriault Company Facebook page. And you can stay up to date with the latest auctions and events at Theriaults.com. We'll talk to you on the next episode of The Curious Collector.